Well, I grew up in the West End. I lived in Over-the-Rhine, Walnut Hills mostly, and then I moved to Detroit. And when I came back, the West End was gone. There was no West End anymore. So I moved to Over-the-Rhine. That was the first apartment I got when I came back from Detroit. And then I moved to Walnut Hills and raised my kids there. Oh, I worked at the Cincinnati Enquirer for 25 years and took care of my grandchildren because their mother died when Raven was born. So they moved in with me, and we've been together pretty much ever since. They were in foster care, and after I got custody of them, I got this apartment from community housing, and we've been living here about 2 years now. It's just my aunt died, and I retired from work. I'm mainly a stay-at-home kind of person. I read, I watch the kids, I have to look out for them, and I have a few friends. They don't live down here. They moved out. My best friend, she grew up in the West End too, and she used to live in Lincoln Courts, but they tore that down too. So now she lives in Finneytown, and she comes to see me, and I come to see her. She knows all of this down here, just like I do, because we grew up down here. But she doesn't like to change at all. She really can't get used to it. So she prefers to stay where she is. And I can't blame her for that. A lot of people feel that way. It always happens the same way. People come in, they start doing renovations and gentrifying the neighborhood, and people who live there usually move out. Some people have moved out to like Forest Park and Avondale and Mount Auburn, and then they come in and change that, and then they have to move someplace else, and now they're going to Westwood and Norwood, and quite frankly, there weren't that many black people in Norwood for quite some time. But now when I go that way, I see there are quite a few that didn't live there in the past because they all lived in the West End or over the Rhine. We lived here. Yeah, most of us lived in this area. Especially like in the 50s and early 60s, everybody knew the West End and over the Rhine. That's where we lived. But now they kind of spread out all over. You don't have any choice. You really have to, because you go where you can afford to pay rent. And if you can't afford to pay rent here, you're not going to be able to live here. My aunt lived down here because she lived in low-income housing in Over-the-Rhine for like 40 years. At one point, she lived on Vine Street, right across from Tucker's Restaurant. She lived there for about 20 years, and then she moved on Pleasant Street. And she lived there 25 years until she died. Even back then, I told her they were going to change this neighborhood. I kept telling her that because I saw what they were doing with Walnut Hills. Gilbert Avenue, they just completely restructured it, and I saw what they did with the West End. They just completely just tore it up. It's just industry and things like that down there now. There's no homes, no people, no families. And she lived on Pleasant Street. And I look at what they're doing to Pleasant Street today. It's amazing. It really looks great. But I know the people who live there won't be able to afford to live there, once they finish reconstructing what they're doing over there. It's really pretty, though. It's been changing steadily for like the last 10 years or so. I like some of the changes. I do like what they've done with Vine Street. I liked what they did with Main Street when they did that. But it does put a lot of people who can't afford it out of the neighborhood. I just read about a man who used to live on Walnut Street. They just closed his building and they're going to redo it. He cannot afford to live there now, so he had to move to the north side. That's happened to a lot of people. I don't have a problem with what they're doing. It's just people who don't have a large income can't afford to live in a neighborhood that they've lived in all these years. But after they just completely destroyed the West End, I pretty much expect that kind of thing. And they did the same thing with the projects. They just tore them down right past Central Parkway. They call it City West now. And they promised those people that they would have someplace to live, but they don't. Only a few people were able to go back there once their renovations were finished. They have a lot of houses down there and a lot of empty places that I've noticed. People that can't afford to buy them because they're for sale. It's not like it used to be because that was a very active place at one time. When I went over there, I often go walk over that way, and I don't see anybody there anymore. Central Avenue used to be they had so many black businesses over there that you could go to. There are none now, and that's the saddest part. That the best businesses have to move out of the neighborhood too because they can't afford the rent. After they renovated Finley Market, you pretty much saw the way things were going to go because, I always loved Finley Market. I've been going to Finley Market for like 60 years. My brother used to work, sell shopping bags on the market back in the day. But once they renovated it, it's nice still, but it's not the Finley Market that I'm used to. It's smaller. It's yuppified. It's what it is. It's not the Finley Market I remember. But I still go there. And that's one of the few places you can get fresh produce. The Kroger's that we have down here is not very good as far as that's concerned. So I'm just happy it's still here. because it's needed. I'm not angry like some people are very, very angry that this is happening, but I think it's a good thing. I think people should be able to live where they want to. If they can afford to live in Over-the-Rhine, good for them. But I do think it's a shame that the neighborhood has changed so much that there are no black businesses on Vine Street or Main Street or Walnut Street, any of those places. When I have to buy her stuff for her hair, I have to go to Walnut Hills or Avondale. Even hairballs, they only cost $1 or $2, but you can't find any down here, so you have to go someplace else to get them. Because there's none, all those businesses they have over there, none of them cater to blacks. And it's pretty apparent, And there used to be a lot of black businesses in this neighborhood. I've looked in all the shops over there, and quite frankly, they're too high for me, most of them. I don't have the money to buy the things that they have. They're catering to a certain clientele, and that's just the way it is. I just think it's sad that there's nothing for black people down here to buy. And as far as restaurants, they have very nice restaurants, but quite frankly, I'd rather cook. It's cheaper. And I can have what I want. But I don't resent the people who go out and have a good time there. I know people who do. They don't like it. It's like they're taking over the neighborhood. But, it's their neighborhood too, so why shouldn't they? I've seen it on occasion that people are saying nasty things to a white person. It's totally unnecessary. But I've seen them say things where they try to make them feel guilty, which is ridiculous. Why should they feel guilty because they have money?
Do you think that the city's doing enough to accommodate for lower income and poor people?
No, they never do. Quite frankly, when I went to Detroit, I was surprised about how much better they did. City of Cincinnati does not provide good housing opportunities for low-income people. And when they do, they kind of park them all together like they did with Lincoln Courts and Laurel Homes and Witten Terrace and all those places like that. Those are the projects that they have now. Most people I know don't want to live there. They would not live there, because it's just, quite frankly, it's like being on a plantation. And that's not a good thing either. And the little city west, I don't think I've seen any white people down there. I think they're all black families who get Section 8, who live who live there. And I don't know if there's much connection between those people who live there and the people who live in the houses that they've bought down in that community. But, I just don't think the two are going to mix. And I don't know if it will happen here either, because it's just, there's so many differences.
Can you talk about it?
Well, I understand it, quite frankly, it's hard to communicate with the people who live on this side and the people who live over there. Most of the time, they don't have anything in common. They want a place to live for their family. That's about it. But I don't see a lot of mixing of the races that's going to happen just because everybody's down here. I don't think it's going to happen. I think eventually more blacks are going to move out because they won't be able to afford the rent down here. But Section 8 is so hard to get now. The people who have it, they wait forever to get it. And when they get it, they put you in one area. They want you to stay in one area. And I don't think any of these places down here are going to be offering Section 8. They had asked me about if I would be interested in moving into an apartment on Republic. But it was like, once the renovations are done, it's going to be like $725, and I just cannot afford that with 3 kids. I don't have Section 8, so it would just be out of my price range. And it's going to be that way for a lot of people. They just cannot afford that kind of rent.
What would you do if you got notice that you had to...
What, to move?
Yeah, if you had to move.
I would probably head back to Walnut Hills, although it's getting a little bit pricey out there, too. Yeah, I hear people talking about it all the time. And they're straightening up People's Corner, which I think they should have done years and years ago, but that's going to affect a lot of people who live over that way. And they probably won't be able to afford to stay there any longer, because once they do that, then everything changes. Everything changes. Yeah. And it's just a part of life. You just have to learn how to live with it. But you'll find someplace to go. You always do. I will.